Hello all, welcome back to Learning Partner. If you are new, please do subscribe. This is another channel where you can directly connect with me. We have around 1000 plus members already who are working. We take live coding sessions and everything. To just get notified about those sessions, please do join this group. Yeah. So as decided, we are going to see some basic concept of unit testing. Okay. Now, when we talk about unit testing, why unit testing is important and why we should be aware of basic things. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about the small companies, almost like mid-scale or the MNC companies has what we can say, made it mandatory that whatever the code you write, you need to write the test cases for it. So first is we need to write test case of functions we create. Either we create function in component.ts, then service, directive, and pipe, right? These are the places where we can create our functions. So whatever the function you write, you need to write test case for that. Means whatever the functionality you have in that function, you need to write the test case for that. Okay, we are just going with very basic so that everyone will be able to understand, right? So whatever the function you write in your component or either service or directory or pipe, you need to write test case to cover that function. Okay, this is very basic unit test casing. And in Angular, we normally, by default, we have Jasmine and Karma, which are the testing framework we have. But in some project, you might have heard of Zest also. I don't know, like ZDST or ZDST. Zest is also there. It's just the configuration, what the configuration Jasmine Karma provide, just like that Zest is also there. I'm not in deep, I don't know about like Zest and everything, but whatever things, the basic framework setup, Jasmine and Karma provide, just like that we have with the Jest. Okay. And some little bit code will change, but basic almost test cases will be same. Some, let's say, how do we write API call test cases by using spy on in Jasmine and Karma? Something in Jest and will be little bit different. Okay. But basic all test cases will be same. And up till now, I don't know like about any other framework, but these two only are most famous. So we should be aware about the basic test cases. How do we write it? And at least means what is test case? How we actually have to cover the test case if we have any function, how we actually cover that. If you understand the basic also now, because test case is little bit what we can say tricky. What to write and what number of lines I have to cover. Once you get that knowledge, then only you will be able to understand what are the test cases. Okay. Now this is about very basic thing. One more thing is Sonar. So Sonar is kind of a tool which get installed in our repository and connected with our repository. Whatever the code we write, it will analyze that code. Okay. And whatever the number of lines you have written into .ts, you need to cover each and every line. Each and every line. It's not just writing the test case. Whatever the lines, if you have written if statement, else statement, inside if statement, you have for loop. So every line you need to cover. If your project has Sonar, then every line of code you have written into your .ts or service, every line you need to cover. Otherwise, in Sonar, it will show like this line is not covered in the test cases. Okay. But Sonar will have limited, not every project, or at least currently, not every project will have Sonar integrated to check the code quality and everything. But almost like in MNC, because client asks these things. Let's say a company got a project. Okay. They, no one likes to write the test cases and no one wants Sonar also. No one wants, not even your manager, not in your TL also. No one wants it. But client will ask for it. Like whenever we get the project, we sign some document, right? So in that document or whatever the contract we create, in that they will mention like Sonar implementation or Sonar verification should be there. Test cases should be written. So that's why we have to focus on this. And now starting like every what do we say, in interview also they have started asking unit testing, like are you aware about the unit? They are not going in deep, but they will try to judge like are you currently writing it or you are aware about that unit test casing, what, how we need to write, basic thing they will check. Okay. Now So I have created this testing component. In that testing component, very basic code I have written. Guys, don't use this whiteboard. I have disabled it, but why still it is with? Just a minute. Huh? Don't use anything, okay? I have disabled everything. Share whiteboard and everything. Okay, don't use anything. Just attend the session, okay? Now, so guys, please just watch the session. Don't use Zoom any functionality which is provided from Zoom, okay? Now, so some basic example I have created. So we have created two variable. Imtiaz, I will remove you. Please don't. You are disturbing everyone also. Okay. How to disable it? I don't know. Okay. Anyway, so what I have done, I have created two variable num1 and num2. Let me show you the UI also. And these two variable I have binded to my text box. One more variable I have created, that is result. So we have created two text box. These two text box I have binded with ng model num1 and num2, and one more text box, that is result. It's a simple addition, right? Now for doing the addition, there are various functions I have created. So first is like in this variable, in this function, what we are doing here, only we are writing the logic to get the addition, and we are storing that addition in the result variable. Second, in second way, in this function, what we are doing, we have created one more function, a function which is accepting parameter and which is returning some value also. Whatever the parameter we pass, that will make the addition of that, and that is returning. So in this function, we are, instead of writing this addition core in this function, I'm calling this function over here, right? And whatever the result we get from this function, that we are storing it over here. One more way is we are getting the addition from our service. So one service is there, customer service. Inside this, I have created this function, a simple function which was in my .ts. Same like that, I have created that function into my service function with parameter, and we can just make the addition and return it the value. Fine. So these are the three different ways how we can do the addition. Okay. Now, what if we have to write the test cases for this function? As I said, I'm not going to take any, what do we say, uh, any means any complex scenario, because most of the guys don't know about. Even I'm also not that much very deep into, because in my project we have GitHub Copilot, so it will write the test cases for us. So I also didn't get much time to explore very deeply. Okay, so in this session we will just complete the basic part. In next session we will move into little bit deeper. Fine. So first scenario is like we are going to write test cases for this function. Just a minute, because 100 count is there, so no one will be able to join. Let me just put the message. Just a minute. I didn't expect that everyone will join. Otherwise, I would have used another Zoom. Okay, let it be. Fine. So these are the functions we have in our .ts. Now I need to cover this function. Now, how do we write the test cases for this function? Okay. So let's open our testing file. So by default, when we create the project, we get the testing file also, right? So let's open it, testing.spec.ts. Again, I won't be going with theoretical like what is this and what is not, but let's first try to understand how we write the test cases. Then in next episode or next session, we will be going with the theoretical part, like what is described, what is before each, what things we can do in over there, all these things. Okay. So let's open it side by side. So see, in this function, okay, first let me comment this. Otherwise we will get error for service. Okay. So first we will target about this three function. So on add function. So what is the functionality we have over here? This dot result in this variable, we are going to do the addition of num1 and num2, and whatever the result we get, that we are going to store it over here. So if we have to write the test case for this function, let's start. How do we write? So in the describe function, you need to write the test case. Now there are so many components in my code, so I just need to test this particular component. So what we do, we add f over here in describe. So first this component will be tested. Okay. So if you don't provide it, all component it will be tested. It will come one by one. But I need this component should be tested first. So my test case result will be for this component at the top. Okay. Now in the describe function, you can see it. So here we just have to write the test cases. This is the by default test case, just to check like component object has been created. It will be by default there. Fine. Now we have to write the test case for this function on add. So what we write it, whatever the message test case message you need to give, should should get result. Okay. Then we normally provide the function name also. So our function name is on add. It is whatever you feel like, whatever the functionality you have in this function, just like that you can provide the test case name. Just make sure you need to provide the function name also, otherwise it will be very difficult to understand which function this test case is. So make sure whenever you write the test case name, you have to provide the function name also. After that we need to write arrow function. Okay. So this is your basic test case. Now so in this function, we need to write, in this test case, we need to cover the lines of code we have written over here. So I know it's just a one line. Now, so in this function, from our component.ts, we are using two variable, num1 and num2. So we need to initialize this variable. How do we initialize? So at the before each, in describe function, you can see we have created instance of our testing component. The name is component. Okay. So here you need to write component dot. What variable we need to initialize? See, in this function, we are using this two variable. Okay. So we need to initialize this two variable with some default value. Okay. So let's say component dot num1. So once you press component and you press dot, see whatever variable and function you have created in the component, you got everything. Basically, we have created instance of our component class, object of that class. So whatever variable and function you have declared, that will be accessible. So what you need to do? Num1 is equal to, let's say, 4. Sorry. So we have initialized our num1 variable. Then again component dot num2 is equal to 5. So we have initialized our two variable. After that, we need to check this piece of code. So writing test case means checking like whatever the logic we have written, same logic you need to write it over here. Means, let me just first write, then I will cover. So here you need to write expect. What you will expect? What is the main functionality of this function? In this variable, we should get the result, means addition. So component dot result variable dot to be. To be means in this variable, what value we should have. So we have to use to be. There are so many things, to be equal, to be to 3, to be true. We will go one by one, whatever we normally use. So to be stands for if you have to compare whatever the value you have with something else. So we use to be. To be, now we have passed num1 and num2 as 4 and 5. So the addition will be 4 and 5 will be 9. 9. So this is your basic test case. So same thing, see over here, what we have done, whatever the value we get in this variable, we are doing the addition, and addition we are storing it over here. So same line of code we have written over here. Just we have initialized the variable, and here we are checking like expect means this variable value should have value as 9, means this variable will hold 9 value. If this num1 and num2 will have 4 and 9, 4 and 5, so result in this variable I will get the value 9. But this is just the code we have covered, but we need to trigger this function also, then only this logic will get triggered. So once you initialize the variable value, component dot, what is our function name? On add. So you need to execute this. This is our basic test case. So if you don't do this now, how this logic will execute, right? So in every test case, wherever you are covering function, inside every test case, you need to execute this function like this. Okay. Now let's test it. So to test it, you need to open a new terminal. Let's open a new terminal and ng test you need to write. Okay. Let's wait. So if our test case is proper, it will say like success or something. Guys, don't message. I won't be able to see the message right now. Let me first complete, then we will go with the question. So you can see over here, should get test result on ad. So this is success. Okay. Now, so our test case got success. Now see over here. Now why testing is important? Why every client asks us to write the test cases and everything. Now I will explain why test cases are mandatory. Now, let's say your product is stable, the project, whatever you have worked, let's say that product is stable. Okay. Some developers left the company or left the project. Now, some new developer came and he tried to change the logic of this particular function. Okay. He doesn't know anything about the whole project, the flow of the project, but he might receive some bug, and to resolve that bug, he might have changed some code. Okay. So let's say instead of adding this num1 and num2, I added plus one again. So now my code got changed. But in my test cases, I have written like if I pass 5 and 4 and 5, I will get 9 result. But now if you see the logic, num1, if num1 get 4 and num1 get 5, still my result will get 10 because here I have added plus 1. So now my test case will break. That's right. See, so my expected value 10, but I got 9 because in this function, I have changed my logic. So let's say your project was stable, but let's say a new developer came and he changed some function logic. Okay. So if he didn't cover the test case, so you will get to know like existing functionality, someone has changed. So that's why test cases are important. So that accidental code changes should be avoided. I don't know like if you are imagining that or not, but if you are already working experience now, then only you can imagine this. If your project is stable, right? If let's say some new guy came and might be like defect he had to whatever the bug or defect he got, that to be fixed in some another function. Okay. Or might be it's an API issue, but he tried to change or just to add something and try to fix the defect. He made the changes to the original function. So he will get, once he run the test cases, then he will get to know like test cases got failed. Then he will check the logic. No. So then he will get to know like I cannot change this function. Because if test cases are written like this, Akshay, please don't use that. Okay. So if test cases are written like this, so I don't need to touch this function. Or if let's say there is a requirement that I need to change this, again I need to modify my test cases also. So this is the actual reason why every client or every project have been asked to write the test cases. This is the reason. So that our code should not get changed randomly by any developer. Okay. Now I'm not sure like if you got this reason or not, but this is the reason why we have to write test cases. Okay. So this was very basic function. For that we have written the test cases. Now let's check this function. And now in this function, what I'm doing, I'm calling another function and I'm passing the parameter also. And that function is going to return the addition. In this function, what we return here only we had the logic. Let me remove this. Otherwise it will bear it. So in this function, we have written our logic over here only. But in this function, what we are doing, we are calling a separate function. Okay. So now let's try for that. It, our test case name, let's say should get sum from our function name, get sum of 2. So whatever possible scenarios were there, just to cover basic thing, I have created that. Okay. Now, So we have to write the test case for that. Now in this function also I'm going to use these two variables. So we need to initialize some value. Component dot, sorry, component dot num1 is equal to, let's say, 5. Component dot num2 is equal to 7. Okay, so in num1 I have assigned 5 and num2 I have assigned 7. Now in this function we are going to call our another function, right? So here we are calling an external function which is returning some value. Okay, so here first what we need to do, we will call component dot our function, get addition function. Okay, after that in this function, in this test case, we will create a local variable, let's say const result, or let's say addition add result is equal to. Now what we need to do in this function, we are going to call this function of the component. So component dot this function, and we need to pass these two variable. So either we can do like this. Okay, so let's pass this over here as a parameter, and second parameter component dot num2. Let's see if this work. Otherwise we have to create local variable. Let's try. So then we have to write our expect statement. So expect, now this result I need to match. So expect result to be what the value we are passing 5 and 7. So it should be 12 over here. Fine. Let me just stop and share it again. Guys, don't use that, whatever it is. Okay. Let's save. Let's save. Let's check if our test cases are success. Yeah. So you can see 2 success. Okay. Sorry, 3 success. So if we check this, so you can see this function, this test case also got success. So here you can see the difference between these two. So in first function, we were having the logic over there only. So here only we have checked if result is getting 9 or not. Here we were using some another function, and this function was returning some value. So we have created this variable and we have checked with that. Okay. Now one way to do this is this, by we have initialized the local variable. Another way will be, let me just write it again. Instead of assigning the value to the component variable, I can create the constant also. Num1 is equal to 6, const num2 is equal to 6, and here we will say 6 and let's say 3 and 3. So addition I have to match it with 6. 2 2 I am adding second test case. Let's check it over here. So whenever you save, okay, so here you can see we got it is failing, should test for 22, expected 0 but to be true. So as I said, in this function we are having this variable we are passing, but here, okay, wait, so see what we did, we copy pasted, right? But here we are passing num1 and num2, but num1 and num2 we didn't initialize, so by default it will have 0 value. So we need to pass this. So num1 and num2. Now our test case will execute, because by default component variable were having the value default value whatever 0 0. So 0 cannot be equal to 6 na, so our test case got broke. Now we are passing the correct parameter, so it will be 6. So if we check over here, see this function 2 2, it got success. So either you can initialize your variable and that you can pass, or you can create a local variable and that also you can pass to the function. I hope you are getting it. Okay, now we need to cover this function, a function which is having two parameter and which is returning some value. Now we need to cover this function now. So let's see how do we write the function for this. So this is just a normal function. We are not calling this function from our HTML, right? It's just a normal function, independent function. This function we are going to call in another function, just like here we have called. So how do we write the test case for this? So it, right, now this function we are going to cover should test this function, arrow function. Okay. Now here what we are supposed to write, we need to what do we say? uh, this function has two parameter, num1 and num2, right? We are not using any local variable from our component. Is this function just have two parameter, and whatever the parameter we get, it should return the sum of that two parameter whatever we got. Okay, so here we need to create two local variable. Okay, then that local variable we will pass it over there to check it. Okay, so let's try now. So here we need to create local variable. So const number1 is equal to, let's say, 7. Const number2 is equal to 5. So see, whenever you are writing a test case for a function which has parameter, so you cannot pass parameter like that. You need to create a local variable, and while calling that function, you will pass that local variable function. So now where is our function? In component. So component dot our function name, that is get sum of 2. Okay, so now here we are passing, here we are actually calling our function, but this function is going to return some value, and first we need to pass the variable. So number1 comma number2. So this function is going to return some value, so we need to obviously store it. So constant result add is equal to, okay, so whatever the value this function return, that we are going to get it over here, so that we need to write it expect again this variable to be, what this variable should be, 7 and 5 is equal to 12. Let's save and check if this gets should test get sum of two number, it gets success or not. See, last function, it got success. Okay, if I try to, let's try to change the function definition. Here I'm now I have changed my function definition. It will do the addition of two number plus it will adding two. Now my test case will get failed. Okay, because in test case I have written like if I pass, where it is, 5 and 7 I will get tail, but now if I pass this 5 and 7 over here, I'm going to get 14, so my test case will get fail. See, I got my test case failed because expected value was 14, but we in test case we have written 12, so it got failed. Okay, so that's why the reason I have explained. So no one should be changing the existing code and everything. That's why we have to write test cases to cover all the code, so that no one should accidentally change any code. Fine. So now the basic thing we have done. Now next thing is same addition code we are going to do, but now we are going to call this function from our service. Okay, so let's uncomment constructor. Let's uncomment this also. See, once I uncomment this constructor code now, we will get error. See, what is the error? Injector error, null injector error. When do we get this error? If you have not worked on the test case also, now you might have got this error. In the previous project, if you are using any service and if you don't pass that service into provider, we used to get this null injector error. Okay. So if whenever you are writing a test cases and in your component, let's say you have one service you have injected. So in your describe function, this in before each, you also need to integrate this. How do you integrate that? So first you need to create instance of your customer service. So cust service is equal to data type will be customer service. So customer service. So whatever the injection you have done, you need to write it the same, because this describe function is nothing but same as your component. Whatever services you have, you need to import it over here. Whatever the module you have, you need to import it over here. Just like that, it will go. Okay. So otherwise you will get null injector error. So we have created instance of our component. Then in the import statement, here also we had this decorator, just like that. Here also we have this decorator. Okay. We are preparing everything. So here we will have provider, and in provider, what you need to import? Our customer service. Then here you need to inject this service. So customer service dot inject. How we write that? Sorry. is customer service equal to test bed. Okay, now what is test bed, I will explain theoretical part in the next session. But for now, whenever we have a service injected, this is how we do. First we need to create the instance of our service, then over here by using test bed we inject is test bed dot inject. What we need to inject? Our service class name, like this. Okay, still we will get error. I will show you. Let's save and check. Error will get changed. Now it is saying null injector error is still there, but it is for HTTP client, no provider for HTTP client. Now in our component we are not using HTTP client, but still it is giving that error. So in my service I am using HTTP client. See, over here I'm using HTTP. So this also we need to add it over here. So in provider HTTP client, you don't need to create object of this service. Okay, but in provider you should have it. Let's say one more error we will get. Let me show you that. See, now second error we have got for HTTP handler. Let's say if you are using HTTP client in your component or in service, you need to import HTTP client and HTTP handler also. These two things you need to do. Always just like, see, I know like these things like how we will remember when to do this. But once you start writing in every component, you are going to do the same thing. So you will get it by heart. Okay. So whenever you are having HTTP client either in a service or in a component, first you need to import in provider section, you need to have HTTP client and HTTP handler also. These two things should be there. Now if I save, we won't get any error. Fine. So we have done the basic integration of our service. Now we have to actually cover our this function. Okay. So let's write it. So again, it should get some from service. Our function name is get addition from service. Okay. Then comma, round bracket, array. Okay. Now over here, what we need to do. So whenever we, what do we say? We are using one function from another service. So we have to make a here we have to make use of the spion. Now again I said like a spion I will explain. Okay, but for now we will just check like how do we write the test case if we are using any function from our service into our component. Okay, so you have to use spion. Okay, now how do we use the spion? So first in this component, we are using these two variable num1 and num2. So let's initialize that. So component dot num1 is equal to, let's say, 3. Component dot num2 is equal to, let's say, 4. So we have initialized our two component variable. After that, you need to spy on. So spy on. Okay. Then inside this, what we need to pass is object. Object is nothing but the object which you have created for the service, customer service. See, the first you need to provide the object. Why it is showing like this now? Then your method name, whatever the method name you are using from that service object. So our object, comma, then our method name. What is the method name you are using from this service? Add to number. This function you are using. Okay. Then you need to write and dot call through. This is how you create a spion for this function. Okay. After that, you need to first initialize your function from the component. So component dot our function this. After that, so this function is going to return some value. So now you need to write it for that. Expect first we are going to cover this piece of code. Okay. So expect customer service dot we are passing this function and we need to pass component this value as a first parameter and this value as a second parameter. Okay, dot to be what value we are passing 3 and 7. So from our service function we should get 7 over here. So this is we have covered our service function line, but this function is returning also value. See, this function is returning some value, right? Sorry, sorry, this in this function we are whatever the data we get from this service function we are storing into this variable. So that also we need to cover. So expect what we are where we are going to get. So component dot result to be true. So we should get 12 over here in this variable. Sorry, 7. Okay. Let's save and let's check it if it gets success or not. See, from our service, this also got success. So this is how you write test cases. Okay. Again, so many scenarios are there, but for now we will stop it over here. Like if and else, how do we write if and else? This if we have exist kind of code for loop, how do we write the test cases? I will cover that. Okay, in the next episode. Okay, I will unmute and allow you to unmute now. We can go with questions. Again, keep it limited. Don't ask any random because I'm also new. Just to have a basic knowledge delivered to you, I have prepared this. Okay, so whatever I know, I will try to answer that. Where it is, yeah. Okay, you can go one by one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
This is Aravind.
yep.